From the frosty shores of the North Saskatchewan River right here in scenic Prince Albert, this is your host, Scott Roos, and on the line with Down to the River today is the man, myth, and legend himself, Colin James. How are you doing, my good sir?
I'm well, thank you very much.
Yeah, well, of course, the big news is you're going to be sitting in with the legendary Downchild blues band on November 16th at the EA Rawlinson. So, I mean, I'm assuming you've got a history of great respect and appreciation for this group.
You know, as a kid growing up in our house, we had the Downchild Blues Blues Band Straight Up record in the collection. I remember looking at the cover when I was, I don't know, 10, 11, 12 years old. And fast forward 2 years, with songs like Flip Flop and Fly and like that. And then years later, when I had moved to Vancouver, I went to the town pub one night. That used to be where I hang out and play. I saw Albert Collins there, and Harold Ballard there, and a bunch of amazing people. Hollywood Fats, right before he died, played there. And anyway, I'm not sure if I was playing or I was just hanging out because I used to live in Gastown at the time. And Donnie was the guitar player. Donnie Walsh was sitting at the bar, and I remember introducing myself and saying, "Hey, I've been listening to you guys for a long time." And he was just super nice to me, and we had a great talk. And then since then, I was on their show in Massey Hall,
right,
when they had Paul Schaefer and Dan Aykroyd and James Cotton on the bill that night, as well as one of the Memphis Horns, the last remaining member at the time of the Memphis Horns, was there as well that night. So a really amazing night, actually. And so that was fun. And then years after that, I got invited to go to Norway with Downchild, just kind of as a special guest, and we played Oslo, a blues festival north of Oslo.
Yeah.
And I ended up taking the bus back all the way and yakking with the guys in the band. And so since then, I've just kind of I've gotten to know everyone quite well. It's a pretty tight community, the blues community. So you see people every year at the award shows and whatnot. So there you go. And a lot of respect there, and probably one of the longest going blues bands in Canada.
Yeah, no doubt. Yeah, well, I mean, 50 years, right? I mean, geez, they managed to keep it going for 5 decades. I mean, of course, there's been lineup changes and whatnot, but I mean, that's still impressive.
Yeah, for sure. And I've had some great times. I think I sat in again with them at Massey Hall another time, and so I'm doing a few. I'm doing Prince Albert with them, Regina with them.
Yeah.
Just a few shows this year, and out of not just it's always fun. So I always have a good time, and out of respect for the band.
Yeah, of course. Well, what do you look most forward to when you're sitting in with those guys, Colin?
Well, I'm always doing my own thing. It's usually my show.
Yeah.
So I kind of get to be someone who sits in on 4 songs or so, and then that's it for me. So it's always kind of nice to not be the kind of main event and be able to just kind of hang back and play and be one of the band. I don't get to do that super often, so I don't mind that.
Yeah. Well, now in your estimation, I mean, you talked about your personal experiences with Downchild, but I mean, in your estimation, like, the importance of Downchild, I mean, how do you see them in terms of where they fit in the grand scheme of not just Canadian blues music, but blues music in general?
Well, I guess longevity has a lot to do with it. I mean, I think people say it was one of the things that started the Blues Brothers, movie, was kind of the relationship with Dan Aykroyd and the guys in that band from Dan Aykroyd growing up in Toronto and in the area.
Yeah.
So obviously that had huge repercussions. That movie was such a huge movie.
Oh yeah.
And again, a lot of bands don't make it through through the years. They end up being a shadow of their former selves because there's been so many changes, or what have you. But these guys have been sticking it out for a long time, and the time I went to Norway with them was, that was super amazing for me because I'd played Norway with my own band before, but again, just being a special guest, and Solomon Burke was on the bill on that trip, and
wow,
so that was great to see Solomon Burke right before he passed on.
Sure.
So anyway, it'll be great.
Yeah, no kidding. Well, another great thing that's happened is, you released Miles to Go, your 19th album, at least according to the information that I have in front of me. I mean, it's not 50 years, but I mean, going on almost 20 records is, not too shabby there, Colin.
Yeah, we got another one kind of on the way. It's not. I gotta buckle down and get finished, but it's. We got another one mostly done.
Oh wow!
And that'll be another. So, but yeah, we've had a great time. Ever since I did. We did Blue Highways 2 records ago.
Yeah.
A Miles to Go, kind of following up on the heels of it, and after years of kind of straddling the fence between pop and rock and blues. I felt it was time. I'd played straight blues before, and I think I'd have to argue the Little Big Band records were, really in a lot of ways straight blues too.
I wouldn't
Although
disagree.
They were kind of slightly clouded by the fact that there was a huge kind of fad. The retro swing fad was kind of going on at the same time.
Yeah.
And Blue Highways. So for me, Blue Highways kind of set me off in this direction where, I'm not going to make blues records every time, but it was kind of good to kind of double down and kind of say, I do love the blues. Here's a straight blues record from songs that I've loved all my life. And, it's kind of, it's opened up some doors for us in the United States. We're doing a lot of the blues, the blues cruise we do every couple of years that goes down into Puerto Rico and back. And we played, Las Vegas's Blues Bender this year. So we're starting to get in those names of the blues bands that are doing it these days. So that's good.
Yeah, for sure. Well, now one of the tracks that really intrigued me on this record was, your arrangement of "See That My Grave Is Kept Clean" by Blind Lemon Jefferson. I mean, what was going through your mind when you were creating the arrangement and doing that beautiful acoustic rendition?
Well, it's live, so I just remember being petrified about making a mistake because it was just me and the engineer, and you do want to make it. You don't want to have to punch in on a song that's just vocal and guitar like that.
Yeah.
But those kind of songs, it's always amazing because you would think that those songs wouldn't have the impact that One More Mile would. One More Mile being kind of a pulsing Chicago blues. But in actual fact, both of the acoustic songs on both of these last 2 records, "Riding in the Moonlight" by Helen Wolf, which was on Blue Highways, and "See That My Grave Is Kept Clean," have gotten both the most spins on Spotify out of all the songs. Wow. I think "Riding in the Moonlight," well over 1.5 million, and "See That My Grave Is Kept Clean" gets a whole bunch of play in Sao Paulo, Brazil.
That's interesting.
So I think there must be some kind of acoustic blues love of that in Brazil, because I notice a lot of my spins come from there. So
now, do you think there's a resurgence of just acoustic blues in general, Colin? Or?
Well, I think acoustic blues has that kind of lonely sound that everyone loves a good rocker that has horns and everything.
Yeah.
But I think when you're playing that really scaled down stuff, whether it's Robert Johnson or Blind Lemon Jefferson or John Hammond Jr.'s versions of those songs or whatever, there's an immediacy and a person. You can feel the personality in them. You're not clouding it with a million instruments,
Yeah.
And occasionally we did "See That My Grave Is Kept Clean" on our whole national tour. And sometimes you think that a big hall, wouldn't want to hear something so quiet. But every night we did it, it went over great, and it's kind of like a palate cleanser when you've been getting your your head knocked off with with rock and stuff all night. It's nice to calm it down.
Yeah, well, one thing too that I've noticed with Miles to Go is, I mean, there's a big focus on sort of you kind of taking some of these, I guess, songs from that great American blues songbook and kind of reimagining them in your own way. And I know a few weeks ago when I was talking to, Sean Verow of Wide Mouth Mason, he's doing kind of a new thing with slides on his fingers and stuff. And he's talking about going into the section of the room that, already hasn't been walked over. I mean, is this the Colin James way of going into a different corner of the room, so to speak?
Well, I like, first of all, Sean, I love the way Sean's playing these days. He's doing that crazy stuff with his left hand, with all the slides on his hand. He's playing so good. But I think, it's important. First of all, it's important if you're going to pick songs that you love. But it's also important trying to pick songs that haven't been picked over to death. And that, it's hard to do. There's only so many great songs out there. I tried to do that with the Little Big Band years ago, try to pick songs that weren't obvious.
Yeah.
And I continue to try to look for those kind of hidden gems that, they're not going to be Kansas City or, Dust My Broom, which have been covered by a gazillion people over and over and over again. I'm always I'm always trying to, and it's fun, it's also fun that way because you start listening to records and See That My Grave Is Kept Clean kind of came to me one day, someone else's version. Bob Dylan recorded that song on his very first record.
Oh, really? Wow.
Which I found out it's not his version that got me going on it, but after I recorded it, I realized that all kinds of people did it, and Dylan on his very first, which was a shock to me. But,
That's interesting. Yeah. I mean, just to bring things full circle here, because I don't want to keep you too much longer, but I mean, of course, we've been talking about how you're coming in a few weeks now to sit in with the Downchild Blues Band here in Prince Albert at the E.A. Rawlinson on November 16th. So, I mean, I got to ask the token PA question. I mean, given that you're, originally from Regina, I mean, do you have any memories of playing in PA in your early days, and how crazy was it?
Yeah, I used to play a bar up there, but I can barely remember. I remember I had to play a bar one time, hitchhike back to Saskatoon. I remember that. I don't remember why. I remember sitting at the side of the road hitchhiking with this friend of mine, and I don't remember how I got to that situation. But, and I think I was in theater for a while, and I believe I may have done a play. That was kind of a live, interactive play that would, kind of interact with the audience. And if I'm not mistaken, we may have done a show up there somewhere. But, again, and every year as a kid, we'd always go just up to the left, up to Doré Lake, and go pike fishing when I was a kid.
Yeah.
So that whole area has, we loved Waskesiu as a kid too. So,
of course.
Owl's Cabin and all that stuff was. I'm not sure if I knew Grey Owl was a fraud at the time, though. But whatever the case was, Archibald, what was his name? Archibald something around. His real name.
I would imagine now. I would imagine now coming back to Saskatchewan, anytime getting back on the home province turf is, a meaningful experience, eh?
Yeah, I don't get back a lot, and often when I do, I'm only in for a day, so there's only so much I can usually get done. But we played the Jazz Fest, well, not the Jazz Fest, but we played behind the Besborough in Saskatoon. We play the Jazz Fest fairly often, and we played this year again, and I always have a great time there. It's a nice outdoor by the river, and that's always a gas. And, so every couple of years I'm back, and I don't have a whole lot of time to reminisce and get into it, but it's always interesting to be back.
Right on, Colin. Well, listen, I really appreciate you, just coming down to the river with me today just for a little chat. And I'm looking forward to, seeing you perform with Downchild in a couple of weeks. I mean, you mentioned you got another record on the horizon too. So, I mean, is this sort of going to be part of a trilogy then of more traditional blues records?
I think we got one more at least in that genre. there's a few ideas that we're playing with, and of course I always like to keep writing and look into more contemporary stuff as long as it fits and doesn't go too far astray from the roost. You know what I mean?
Of course.
Because it's always good to keep writing and keep trying to make something new, whether it's still based in traditional music or not. I know recently after the Memphis Blues Awards, I went down and wrote with Luther Dickinson and Colin Linden in Nashville. We did a couple songs together, and really enjoyed that. And Luther being from the North Mississippi All Stars. His dad was Jim Dickinson out of Memphis, and really nice guy. And went down to Austin and wrote a bit with Gordie Johnson after that. And Gordie and I keep in touch. And so yeah, always looking to keep going and not just play blues covers. You always got to keep your writing, keep working on original material, and that's still in the works too. So.
Right on. Well, thanks again, Colin, for taking the time out to chat with me. And like I said, I'm looking forward to November 16th at the Rawlinson. I think it's going to be a great one.
Excellent. Can't wait.
All right. You have a good day.
All right. You too. Bye-bye.
Bye.